Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk. I believe it's designated amendment number 29.
The clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2309, offered by Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Originally, this amendment, the operative language in this amendment struck titles 1, 2, and 3 of the underlying bill. However, after our discussion regarding the overpayment due to the Post Office regarding the FERS overpayment, which is about $7 billion, and the discussion about a possible way to work that out so that we might use part of that money to sponsor a early retirement program, since that is the Post Office's money, and it would achieve the objective of reducing the size of the Postal Service by offering an early retirement incentive. What I've done here is, rather than strike sections 1, 2, and 3, I've simply redrafted this to put this language regarding the FERS overpayment at the end of the bill. So everything in the bill would remain as is, except the language here would direct that the overpayment of the FERS obligation by the Post Office be used for the purpose of sponsoring an early retirement system for those employees who are already eligible for full retirement. So that's basically what would happen here. And
would you yield?
I sure will.
So your amendment then would take whatever amount is in FERS that may be deemed to be an overpayment and put it towards incentivizing early retirement.
Well, it would give. It would. That's correct. It would provide voluntary separation incentive payment as established under Section 3523 for eligible employees, those that are qualified to retire, and providing voluntary separation incentive payments as established under 3523 in conjunction with voluntary early retirement authority for eligible employees. It's already, part of Title V, I believe. Yeah, Title V.
One more question, would you yield?
Sure.
What if there is not a surplus?
No, this is the part that's already been agreed, that the basic calculations of FERS has been established that there's an.
And I guess my question goes to that calculation is from 2009, and I'm assuming that it shows that there's still a surplus if there was a surplus. I guess what I'm saying is that where are we if we have an up-to-date calculation? Well,
it would require a calculation of the surplus. And the amount, nothing, if there's zero surplus, there's nothing to fund an incentive. So it just says that the amount of those surplus postal contributions shall be used by the United States Postal Service for the purpose of, as I said before, a voluntary separation incentive payment as already established under Section 3523 of Title V, and B, providing voluntary separation incentives as established under Section 3523 in conjunction with a voluntary early retirement authority for eligible employees. So those two groups are those that are eligible for retirement and those who are almost eligible for retirement. I think those are the two groups that are defined in those sections of Title V.
Are there any members wish to speak? I'll recognize myself to strike the last word. My concern with the amendment is the fluid nature of FERS, that it's dependent on market actuarial studies, market returns, and what may be deemed to be an overpayment at one point may deem to be an underpayment depending on market conditions. And so that's where I believe, and I have to give a great deal of credit to my ranking member here who I think he and I agree that if we can incentivize those that are eligible for retirement, actual retirement, then I think we've done a great service not only to them but also to helping the Post Office reduce their workforce. My concern is the mechanism by which we're doing this is not necessarily an agreement that there is a surplus or that there will be a surplus later on. There are several agencies that may show a surplus into their retirement system, but yet may not be, and vice versa. So this is subject to market fluctuations over time, which is why actuarially at any given time, that is not actually what is the funded or unfunded liability of a retirement system.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will yield.
But it only deals with a surplus. So if there is zero surplus, there's nothing to hand out. You're not at risk.
And I understand that. I think there's also a more creative way to approach incentivizing, and that's through probably one of the collateralized loan option that we put into the substitute, which I think gives some more capital available to the Postal Service to do that. No, I know it doesn't comport with what you're offering.
Well, no. Look, there's an overpayment of federal employee retirement system contributions. Okay, so those can't be used for other non-retirement purposes. What we're saying is they're going to be reimbursed for their overpayment, but that surplus will still be used for retirement purposes. However, it will be a retirement a retirement incentive for employees who are otherwise qualified to retire, or those who are almost eligible. So that will be an early retirement for those individual employees. This is the Postal Service's money. That's why it's a surplus. It's over what they were normally required to contribute, and so we're restoring it to them, and we're directing them to lower their workforce, which is the object of what I believe the gentleman's bill directs. We're trying to meet the goals of the legislation, but instead of using taxpayer money as the underlying bill would require, it would require us to borrow $10 billion in taxpayer money to give to the Post Office. I don't want to do that. So what I'm suggesting is use the Postal Service's money to fund these early retirements or retirement incentives for eligible employees. That's the object of this amendment, and I purposely left intact the remainder of the bill that the sponsor, Mr. Issa, was defending earlier, with the hope that the discussion that we had earlier about addressing this issue, the FERS overpayment, and the idea of using that, I think it was $7 billion was the estimate. I'm not sure if that's still the number we're dealing with. It's a 2009 number, I believe. We use that money, Postal Service's money, to pay for this early retirement. I think I'm starting to repeat myself, but that's my position.
Thank you. In reclaiming my time, I agree with you that we ought to look at the incentivizing of retirement for those who are eligible for retirement. My concern about using the FERS contribution right now is that the only calculation is as current as of 2009, and we need to see where we are, because as pension funds go, they fluctuate over time, and I don't believe it's prudent to use it at this time to do that, although I think that as time goes on, we might be close to being on the same page with regard to how we fund that.
Let me try this again. Okay. This early retirement incentive would be a very fixed period and payment. It's not meant to go on like for the life of the recipient. This is an incentive, likely to operate only in 2 years, probably the current year and the next year. There would be a certain amount of money put aside from the surplus, so you're not extending any obligation beyond what you have. Now, it may be $7 billion, it may be $5 billion, but what we're saying is whatever is physically there that is owed to the Post Office direct them to use that for an incentive program for retirement for some of these 120,000 employees that they want to move off their payroll. We would not be obligated beyond what we agreed, what Democrats and Republicans agreed to obligate for that purpose. So there is no unfunded liability. It is contained, it's contained within the amount as defined as a surplus of contributions by the United States Postal Service to the Federal Employee Retirement System. I hope I'm making myself clear. I'm sorry.
And I understand your position. My position, to fundamentally and as simply stated, is to say, what if there is no surplus? Do we have a surplus today? Did we have a surplus in 2009? Do we still have one today? And if we use these funds that we allege are a surplus, where are we going to be 5 years from now if it's now an unfunded? And do we have to come back and go higher for pre-funding? That's my concern, is that while I laud the efforts to provide the funding for an early retirement, my concern is that the source of those funds might have unintended consequences down the line if it creates an unfunded liability for pensions, and it also does not take into account where we are as of 2011, only as of 2009.
Let me, one more time. Look, the obligations that we're asking the Postal Service to make here is with its own money. They have contributed too much money, in excess of what they were obligated to do under the terms of the Federal Employee Retirement System. They have money coming back. Okay?
That's the issue.
And that's as of a date certain, and of a specific amount certain, that they will have due back to them. What we're trying to do is to direct them to use that excess for the purpose of lowering their payroll. You can't go wrong here. We're directing the Post Office to use their own money in this fashion, and we've got a little bit of leverage with them right now. Let's face that. And so I know you're saying, well, we don't know what's going to happen on down the road. Right, we don't know what's happening down the road. But we do know right now is that they've overpaid by some number of billions of dollars, and that's real money that's owed to the Post Office. And they're going to get that money, and either we let them use that money for what they will, or we direct them to use it in a way that reduces their payroll, which is what I think we were concerned about at the beginning of this hearing. That's it. I yield back.
Any further